Are you worried that your child isn't connected to their deen? That you have to keep nagging them to pray, and even then you don't know if they're praying? Your child moans to pray and moans to fast, and on their own they would never pick up the Quran. In fact, you're worried that they, about the choices they're making, about the closeness that they have with their friends and the distance that's coming in between them and their deen and their family. If you're wondering, how did it get like this and where did it go wrong, then you're going to love today's podcast, where I dive into exactly where that disconnection happens and what you can do as parents to help bridge that gap for your child to reconnecting their hearts to Allah. But before I do, and I know you can't wait to get started, I have an exciting announcement to make. On Sunday, 20th of August, inshallah, I'll be running a free parenting masterclass where I'll be giving you the parenting blueprint that you need as a professional mother to raise your children as happy and high-achieving Muslims. This will be a step-by-step guide of what your child needs from you to be able to succeed, even when things have become very challenging between you both. So if you're in a place where you wish you could restart your parenting journey again, do it differently, erase the mistakes you've made and recreate an amazing relationship with your child, then you're going to love this masterclass. You can sign up by going to www.happyhomecoaching.com/blueprint. Okay, let's get started, inshallah. Welcome to the Happy Home Podcast, where we help Muslim mothers create success and happiness in their personal, professional and family life and raise their children as happy, pious and productive Muslims. My name is Sayed-Hossen and I am your host and the founder of the Happy Home Institute. Welcome to today's podcast, where we'll be talking about a topic that's dear to every Muslim parent's heart. What to do when your child's disconnected from their deen and from Allah. Because this is something that, as Muslims, it's a non-negotiable for us. Like, we want to raise our children with good manners. We want them to be successful in this world, but we don't want that at the expense of them being connected to their deen. We want them to be connected to our deen and be working for this life and the hereafter, successful in this life and the hereafter. So, unlike perhaps, where there is no religion involved in raising our children, as Muslims, it's very much at the core of what we're trying to do here. I wanted to talk about this topic to help you today to understand, number one, why the disconnection happens, and number two, what you can do about it. Because more importantly, you want a solution. You want to be able to know what to do if you see that your child is disconnected from Allah. You keep having to nag them to pray, and even then, you're not sure if they're actually praying. When you ask them to pray, they're moaning. When they need to fast, your child is moaning. And, you feel like you're having to drag them to the prayer mat. And even then, even when they've prayed, straight after Salah, they do something or say something that indicates that it hasn't really, touched their heart. It hasn't really impacted them. And as a parent, that is going to be of real concern. And, something that may be keeping you up at night, worrying about what their future will be and wondering, what have you done wrong then? This comes up a lot in the clients I work with, those where the parent's relationship with the child is quite disconnected. And then you start seeing a pattern between the relationship with your child and their relationship with Allah. And so when I help parents to be able to build that strong relationship with their child, effectively what you see is that child's relationship with Allah starts to develop as well. And then, knowing the right way to approach it, which I'm going to be sharing with you in today's podcast, you can then help your child connect with Allah, build that foundation for them so that they know who Allah is and look for Him. And that's really what we want. That's our aim. So, let's get straight into it, because I want to talk to you about first, where did it go wrong? Connection with Allah, that's not something that is in, a physical thing. It's like you can physically bring the child to the prayer mat. Yes, you can, but you can't, make them connect. You can't make them talk to Allah, make dua, ask for Allah's help. That is an internal thing. It's internal. It comes from a place of choice. They choose to connect or not. So how can you help your child choose to connect with Allah, choose to look for Allah, choose to please Allah, right? The answer comes in understanding how that connection is formed or that disconnection is formed. Now, what I want to say to you is this: when children are very small, they see their parents as Allah. Like, you're the one who takes care of me. You're the one who makes me better. You're the one who gives me what I need. You're the one, when I'm sick, makes me better. You're the one that when I'm sad makes me happy. You're the one that protects me. Now, you're probably seeing a pattern here with you're the one, you're the one, you're the one. But to a child, that's what they think. And I remember my daughter asking me a question once when she was young and saying, but mummy, of course, how is it that you don't know? Because, you know everything. And, we know that Allah is the one who is Alimu, who's the one who knows everything, not us. So, you yourself will have examples in your parenting where your child assumes you know everything, you can do everything, you're, able. And so in some ways that puts us in a great position. They think highly of us, except that we're human, except that we also make mistakes, and except that we react and get emotional. So when we start behaving harshly, guess what? Your child starts to think, well, Allah is harsh. That's the opinion they start forming of him. Or when you don't make up with your child at night and you stay distant with them after they've made a mistake, they may start to think, well, Allah is unforgiving. Allah pushes them away when they've been bad. When you're maybe constantly mentioning their negative behavior more than the good one, like that's what you see or that's what you keep reminding them of, then they will also, by extension, think that Allah doesn't see the good that they do. So you see, they think of Allah in the way that you treat them. And they think that that's who Allah is. That's how He is and how He treats them. Because they don't know Him. They can't see Him. But, to them, you're an extension of that. And to them, you are like Allah until they grow up. And another end of the spectrum is when we're too soft, and then there are no consequences. We're constantly trying to please our children. Whatever they want is okay. Whatever they do, it's fine. And they start to think they can get away with not praying, not doing the right thing, because actually there's no consequence for them. Because if that's how you are, then that's how Allah is. Like, there's no consequence for their behavior. But we know, of course, in our deen that there is a consequence for what we do unless we turn back and we repent and we repair. So, if you've parented your child like this, or you can see why now they may have a negative impression of Allah and our deen, know that we have made mistakes, yes, but don't worry. This is something that all parents do. And that's why I really wanted to talk about this today, to bring awareness of it. Like, this is how our children are forming their opinion of Allah. Like, who is He? They're deciding that based on how we behave with them, how we react with them, how we are when we're upset with them, how we are when they make a mistake, and how we are when they need us. Are we there for them, or are we busy, in other things? So if this is you, if you can see this now, it's great to have this awareness. And not to worry, because I'll be sharing with you how you can correct it as well. Before I go on to that, what we do need to understand is, and this is something you'll probably resonate with, is as children grow older and they start reaching their teenage years, they start realizing actually that, hey, really, my parents have sinned, or my parents sin in this way, or they've made a mistake. And it becomes absolutely shocking to them that you could make a mistake, that you could actually sin. Because you know what? They expect you to get it right. They expect you to be perfect until they realize you're not. There's a moment, a penny drop moment. Perhaps you yourself can remember the time when you realized that your parents weren't perfect or they sinned. Can you remember then for you how it felt? Like, wow, really? That's quite disappointing. And maybe at that point you even lose respect for your parents, depending on what you've suddenly realized that they're capable of doing or not doing. And so, for all of us, there's a moment where we realize that, wow, my parent actually isn't as perfect as I thought they were. And that's shocking, right? But then that also leads to a slight disconnection and respect for the child and the parent. So there's not just a disconnect that happens with Allah, but there's a disconnect with the parent. I also want to say that if you've tried to be perfect parents too, that doesn't help. When you're hiding your flaws or your shortcomings from your children, always in performance mode, trying to give them the best experience ever, never allowing them to see you rest or unwell or make mistakes or, lose control of your emotions. We don't want to be having outbursts, but, we want them to see that we feel different seasons of emotions and we handle it. But sometimes they, if they don't see that, we have different emotions that we're managing or we're struggling with and trials, then we get the impression that humans can be perfect. And then two things can happen from there. Your child either tries to be perfect too, and they put a huge amount of pressure on themselves, as you have on you, doing something that's an impossible task, an exhausting task that leaves us feeling quite disappointed. Or they end up having, as a result of you putting on, this perfect performance, having a really high expectation of you that no matter what you do, one, it's not enough because they expect so much of you, but two, that, they're disappointed. So, they're a bit disappointed in you not reaching the standard that you've set for yourself. And we know when we're in that place, how disappointing it feels when our child doesn't see what we do and still expects more. So how we come across as parents and our child knowing who we are and who Allah is the key. So if you wanted to know exactly what your children need to learn, it's two things: who Allah is for them and who we are as parents. We need to be able to help our children understand this and make the distinction so that there isn't this huge disconnection that happens later on. For example, for ourselves, our children need to know that we're imperfect parents, trying our humanly best to raise them, to balance everything and to succeed in this world and the next. And when we make mistakes, what we do is we learn and grow from it, and we return to Allah and we keep trying. Our children need to see that of us because they will also make mistakes. And when we seek to please Allah, we do that in the choices we make. We try and make choices that will be good for us in this world and the next. So as parents, they really need to know that this is who we are and learn this from us. Learn this about the nature of human beings and how we still try and succeed given that we're imperfect. So understanding our nature as human beings is really important. I remember, for example, saying to my daughter at the time, no, actually, mummies don't know everything. We know a lot, but not everything. It's Allah who knows everything. And making that distinction so they know that we're imperfect. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Sometimes, mummies forget. Sometimes humans forget. That's how we've been created. But what we can do is remind each other. But what? Allah will never forget. We'll never forget you. And in that way, what you're doing is teaching our children, the distinction between us imperfect human beings, and how we still try and overcome those struggles. And yet knowing who Allah is, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfect. He doesn't make mistakes. He's always there for them. And they need to know Allah through his beautiful names, to really know him, to know, that he's protecting of them. He is the most loving, the most forgiving, the most merciful. These beautiful names, we really want our children to know Allah through his names. But I'd also say to you that we can't learn these names in an abstract way. Quite often we may focus on maybe just memorizing them or learning the definition of them, but that in itself isn't going to build that connection. It may in a few cases, but generally it won't. What really they need to do is understand who Allah is in the context of their life. So for example, when my daughter, because she's someone who asks a lot of questions, mashallah. So when she was asking me once to stay with her at the school gates. She just started primary. And she said, can you just stay here all day, mummy, because I just want to know you're outside, I'm not alone. At that point, I said to her, look, I'm not allowed to stay at school gates. I'm going to have to go. They're going to close the gates, but I'll be here to pick you up, inshallah. But also, you know what? Who isn't going to leave you? Allah isn't going to leave you. He's with you all day. And he's your protecting friend. He's Al-Wali, that's one of his names. And that means that actually, whenever you want to talk to him, he's there. Whenever you feel alone in the playground, he's there, talk to him. Whenever you're a bit scared, he's there. If someone, maybe might be a bit mean to you, Allah is protecting of you, just call upon him. So really teaching our children through their emotions, through their challenges, who Allah is for them. Putting it in a way that is very simple for them to understand. Because when they first start understanding this protective, loving, merciful nature of Allah when they're young, then what that will do is make them want to please him, make them love him, want to make them feel loved by him and feel protected. And then they also need to know that Allah is forgiving, the most forgiving, and will even delay holding them to account so that they can reflect and do the right thing after they made a mistake. Because when Islam was first revealed, the people's hearts were attached to Allah first and to Jannah before the prohibitions were introduced, so that it became easy for them to follow the rules because they already knew who Allah was and they wanted to strive for Jannah. So when we're introducing Islam to our children, we need to teach the beauty of Islam first, the love of Allah, help our children want to understand and want to get to Jannah, and then we can introduce the do this and do that and don't do this and don't do that, the actual actions, because then you want to do it. And think for yourself, your journey to Islam. Yes, many of us would have been raised as Muslims, or we would have come to Islam later, but whatever it happens, no matter how you're raised, there's a moment you choose it. There's a moment that you look for Allah. There's a moment in your life that you recognize that he is there for you. He, subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the one that can help you. And so how amazing is it if you can instill this into your child from a young age? Because then they will be connected and they will understand the difference between us being human and Allah being perfect, and who Allah is for them and who we are for them. It will also take off the pressure for them to try and be superhuman, never make mistakes, try and be perfect. Instead, they'll understand that it is in our nature to make mistakes, it's in our nature to forget, but what we do about that and how we deal with that, this is very important because it keeps us returning back to Allah. Otherwise, they may make one mistake or think that Allah didn't answer their du'as, and then they turn away, and that's it. The disconnection happens. So this is what you do to connect your child to Allah. What I want to talk about now is, what if you didn't do that? What if now your children are grown up? What if they had a different understanding based on your relationship with them? It didn't go to plan. It wasn't how you wanted to parent, but life got on top of you. Your emotions got in the way. And what you can see they need now isn't what you were able to give them. What then? What I want to say to you, my sister, is it's not too late. It's absolutely not too late. And what we have to do in that situation is reset the relationship between us and our child. Because if you go back to realizing that they see us as an extension of Allah, then before we can bring them to Allah, we have to bring them closer to us. And that means we have to rebuild that connection, so they will take that knowledge from us. They will take that advice from us. They'll take that help from us when we're trying to help them through their trials. That's what you've got to prioritize. If you want to bring your child closer to Allah, then bring your child closer to you. And, don't bend the rules either to win them over. Like, don't say to your child, it's okay if you miss Fajr, you can just make it up when you wake up, for example, because that's not something that's permitted to us. If we miss it by accident, yes, we can make it up, but we must try and wake up. And so we need to instill that in our children, that they need to fulfill the obligations, and we don't make it easier in that way in order to make it more palatable, because otherwise we're bending the rules. Then they'll grow up thinking, well, I don't have to do what is obligatory on me because, my mum said I didn't have to do it. And just to give you a very quick story here, I don't want this to go on too long, but I'm sure you're finding it very helpful. to finally be talking about this topic, because it's one that worries a lot of us. I get it from so many calls that I have. I remember my daughter wanting to, when she first started fasting, and then we missed Fajr Suhoor one morning, in the heat of the summer many years ago. And she was, saying to me, well, Mum, she was very young, she was only 10, but can I maybe eat now and then fast? And I said to her, I'm afraid we can't do that. We have to now fast a day. We won't be able to eat now. Okay. She said, okay, well, can I just replace this another day? And I said, well, actually, we're not allowed to do that either. And it was quite hard for her at the time. She was a bit frustrated. She said, why did Allah do this? Why does Allah make it so hard? And I say, it's not. He actually makes it easy for us, but we have to trust him. We can do this. He wouldn't put these rules upon us if we couldn't do it. We just have to trust we can. And we do. We get through the day. And in that moment, even though I wanted to make it easy for her, I had to stick to the rules are the rules. And now that's really paid off, because we're not trying to bend the rules. They are what they are. We trust that we can fulfill them. And so I'd advise you to do the same in that way, inshallah. Like, what is fard upon us, don't make it optional. Only concerning the fard. And then once you've built that connection with your child, then you can start helping them to know who Allah is for them, how he is there for them, how he is not against them, how he SWT will not give them more than they can cope with, that he SWT will respond to their du'as, and how he SWT will forgive them. These are all the things that perhaps we are only just learning now through life lessons and pain. But we want to really be able to instill this in our children from a young age, as young as possible, whenever you're hearing this, so that our children, inshallah, experience less pain and struggle in their lives. So this is definitely the aim of wanting our children to connect with Allah, because we've reached a point where we really value what that means and what that will do for our lives. We want to instill that in our children. And I hope what I shared in this podcast has really helped you to understand where does a disconnect happen, what we can do about it, and what to do when you want to now bring that in and your child is disconnected from you and from Allah. What to do, right? You're going to prioritize your relationship with your child first and rebuild that connection. And don't worry if you see that your child is disconnected or disinterested in closeness with you, because that is something that you can change. Remember, that relationship between you and your child, you have a 50% part in that. And so changes that you make will impact the relationship. And so regardless of where your child is, you can absolutely improve your connection and your closeness in order to be able to then start achieving your parenting goals with your child. So we'll leave it there, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.